Very good evening. Welcome to News Tonight on Rajya Sabha television. I am Aishwarya Kapoor with you, and I'll be getting you the day's biggest news stories from India and around the world in the next 30 minutes. Vice President M. Venkaiah Naidu on Thursday released two reports: status of sex ratio at birth in India and elderly population in India, status and support systems. The reports were prepared by the Indian Association of Parliamentarians for Population and Development. Here is a detailed report.
Addressing the virtual event at his official residence, the Vice President cautioned that development challenges will become more difficult to resolve as population size increases. In this regard, the Vice President pointed out that India's population is projected to grow to 1.52 billion by 2036. He also welcomed the IAPPD's focus on population and development, saying that we must recognize the connection between the two.
Families must plan their population. It's not the government alone. Everybody should think about this issue. As the population size increases, developmental challenges become more and more. It's not that development has not taken place. Whatever you have, you share it. Nah? So you plan the family accordingly. And then move on. The delivery of basic services to reduce poverty is also an important aspect.
Calling for a revival of the joint family system, Venkaiah Naidu said our family system must serve as an example for other countries. The Vice President also expressed distress over reports of neglect of the elderly.
It should be remembered that we are a civilization that has always accorded respect for elderly. We have given the most esteem and also respect to our elders. Even Manusmriti, one of our ancient texts, has this statement: if one serves the elderly with devotion, he or she is blessed with a long life, sound education, fame and strength.
Expressing concern over India's persistent skewed sex ratio, Naidu called it a silent emergency that has serious consequences for the stability of our society. He said we must ensure adequate reservation for women in Parliament and all state legislatures, while urging all political parties to arrive at a speedy consensus on this.
I should suggest that there should be a wider debate on these issues, and the public representatives must focus more. Madam was explaining about number of questions and subject asked by members, area of interest and all. These issues, they are very much important. One is 50% of the population, other is 20% of the population. Proportional concern is not being shown for whatever reason it is. So I suggest that there should be wider discussion and wider dissemination of this information.
The Vice President called for greater attention from public representatives, policy planners, political parties and other important stakeholders to issues of eradicating poverty, illiteracy and social evils like gender discrimination. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Indore created a record by being judged India's cleanest city for the fourth year in a row in the Swachh Sarvekshan 2020. Surat came second, while Navi Mumbai took the third spot. As part of the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, every year since 2014, cities and towns are considered for being Swachh cities based on their cleanliness and sanitation drives. This year's results were delayed due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Kriti Mishra brings us this report.
Madhya Pradesh city Indore was judged cleanest city for the fourth year in the nationwide cleanliness survey on Thursday. The second and third positions were grabbed by Gujarat's Surat and Maharashtra's Navi Mumbai. Varanasi was the best Ganga town in the central government survey. Chhattisgarh was the cleanest state under the 100 urban local bodies category, while Jharkhand was the leanest state of India in the same category. In the category of population of less than 1 lakh, Maharashtra's Karad bagged first position, followed by Shashwat and Lonavala.
One of the unanticipated and solid offtake and results of this scheme is that not only because people will become healthier, there will be sanitation, it will help you fight your degradation of the environment better, but it has a direct impact on the property price and evaluation of where you live.
The Housing and Urban Affairs Minister said cities had highlighted novel ways to address sanitation and waste management through a mix of innovative thinking, technological interventions and active stakeholder engagement.
One of the beauties of this scheme is that it is dynamic and it is constantly evolving. As I said, we started with relatively simple objectives. We started by physically through the building of toilets, individual household toilets, community toilets. We set ourselves targets, 67 lakh individual toilets, 5 to 7 lakh community or public toilets. We met that target. We have now gone from ODF to ODF plus. We have gone to ODF plus plus. We are now into other areas like fecal sludge management. Then the Prime Minister last year introduced a systematic circumscribing, reducing and ultimately elimination of the use of single-use plastics. So we are in many ways, I think we are already through the evolution of the scheme. When we went from 5 years of implementation to the next phase, we have automatically metamorphed into a phase 2.
In the 5th edition of the survey, around 1.87 crore citizens took part from 4,242 cities, 62 cantonment boards and 92 towns along the Ganga River. 129 awards were given to the top performing cities and states in the Swachh Mahotsav event. The Swachh Sarvekshan is aimed at generating large-scale citizen participation along with inculcating a spirit of healthy competition in becoming India's cleanest cities. Mysuru was the cleanest city in the first edition of the survey, while Indore has retained the top spot for 4 years in years since then. Kriti Mishra's report for Rajya Sabha TV.
Lok Sabha Speaker Om Birla on Thursday addressed the Conference of Speakers of Parliament organised by Inter-Parliamentary Union Geneva and Parliament of Austria.
Speaking via video conferencing, Birla said Parliament should ensure public participation in parliamentary oversight and governance. The theme of the conference was improving governance by bridging the gap between parliaments and the people. Birla said Indian Parliament involves the use of the 5 I's to improve people's participation in oversight. This includes interaction of parliamentarians with the public and adopting information and feedback in the working of the House. Informing the public through communication and social media about the programs and policies of the government, involving the public in the development process, imbibing or internalizing feedback received from the public in the administrative process, and improving the administrative schemes and processes. Birla said India's strong parliamentary committee system ensures public participation in legislative oversight work. He added that Parliament is brought to every house in the country through direct telecast of its proceedings through the Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha television channels, dedicated websites as well as social media platforms. At the 2-day conference, participants shared their views on a range of issues from gender equality, the participation of youth in the political process, climate change, human mobility and terrorism. Thursday's discussion also saw the participation of Lok Sabha MPs Rajiv Pratap Rudy and Meenakshi Lekhi, along with Snehlata Srivastav, the Lok Sabha Secretary General. Wednesday was the inaugural session of the virtual conference.
महामारी के दौरान हमारी संसद ने सांसदों और जनता के बीच में 24/7 संपर्क बनाए रखा और इससे हजारों जरूरतमंद लोगों को तत्काल राहत प्रदान की गई। हमारी मजबूत समिति प्रणाली विधायी जांच में जनता की सक्रिय भागीदारी सुनिश्चित करती है।
In some other news, the Parliamentary Standing Committee on Coal and Steel met on Thursday.
Ministry of Mines Secretary Anil Kumar Jain made a presentation on the development of aluminium and copper industries in India. The committee headed by BJP MP Rakesh Singh had held its two meetings earlier this month. Meanwhile, the Standing Committee on Petroleum and Natural Gas discussed in detail the pricing of petroleum products in India. Petroleum Secretary Tarun Kapoor made a presentation on pricing, marketing and supply of petroleum products by oil marketing companies. The committee is headed by BJP MP Ramesh Bidhuri. 18 MPs were present at the meeting, including Rajya Sabha members Chaudhry Sukhram Singh Yadav, Om Prakash Mathur, Kanta Kardam, among others.
And now a look at the COVID-19 update in India. A day of highest ever increase in cases has pushed the total infections in our country to over 28 lakh. Nearly 21 lakh patients have recovered, but India is the third worst hit country globally.
The highest ever increase of 69,652 COVID-19 positive cases in a day and 977 deaths were reported in India in the last 24 hours. With this, the total cases in India have crossed 28.36 lakh, including 53,866 deaths. There are 6.86 lakh active cases and nearly 21 lakh patients have recovered. The recovery rate has improved to 73.90%. India tested the highest 9.18 lakh samples on Wednesday. 5 states with the biggest 24-hour jump in total cases are Maharashtra, Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu and Uttar Pradesh. These states are also the 5 most affected states by total tally of cases. West Bengal on Wednesday added over 3,000 cases for the 6th day in a row, pushing the total infections to over 1.25 lakhs. With an addition of 53 deaths linked to the virus in the last 24 hours, the death toll in the state rose to 2,581. Capital Kolkata remains the worst hit. 8 deaths and 2,898 fresh COVID-19 cases were reported in Odisha in the last 24 hours. The state now has over 70,000 cases, out of which close to 47,000 have recovered. 380 people have died. Jharkhand's COVID-19 caseload rose to 26,300 as 967 more people tested positive for the infection. 13 fresh fatalities pushed its coronavirus death toll to 278. The state has over 9,400 active cases. Himachal Pradesh recorded 29 new cases. The state now has over 4,400 cases, including 1,340 active cases. 19 people have died. Kerala's COVID-19 tally crossed 50,000 on Wednesday, with the state recording the highest daily surge of 2,333 new infections. 7 more fatalities took the toll to 182. In the last 1 month, confirmed cases has grown by almost 4 times, which is among the fastest in India. Meanwhile, the second serological survey conducted in Delhi between August 1st and 7th has found that 29.1% of those tested have developed antibodies against the coronavirus disease. The survey results also showed the prevalence of antibodies among women at 32.2% was more compared to men at 28.3%. A total of 15,000 samples were collected during the survey. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
And now an update on Pranab Mukherjee's health condition and respiratory parameters of the former president has shown a slight improvement, though he continues to be on ventilator support. According to the Delhi hospital, where he has been admitted since 10th of August, Mukherjee developed a lung infection on Wednesday. However, his vital and clinical parameters continue to remain stable. Mukherjee was operated on Monday for the removal of a clot in the brain on 10th of August. He also tested positive for COVID-19. And now an update on the race for COVID-19 vaccine. And the Indian Council of Medical Research has said that emergency authorization for a COVID-19 vaccine was possible if the government so decided.
In forming a parliamentary panel on the development of the COVID-19 vaccine, ICMR Director General Balram Bhargav said that both Indian vaccine candidates were progressing well. He said COVID-19 vaccines developed by Bharat Biotech and Zydus Cadila are nearing completion of phase 2 clinical trials. Stating that normally the final trial takes about 6 to 9 months, Bhargav said an emergency authorization of the vaccine was possible if the government so decided. Another vaccine developed by Oxford University and coordinated by the Serum Institute of India is due to enter phase 3 trials this weekend. 1,600 people will take part in the trials across 20 selected sites.
And the global COVID-19 infections have crossed 22.6 million and claimed nearly 8 lakh lives so far.
The Americas remain the most affected region with nearly 12 million COVID-19 cases and over 4.22 lakh deaths. Europe follows next with over 3.84 million infections. COVID-19 cases across the African continent exceeded 1.13 million on Thursday. Among countries, the United States tops the list with over 5.7 million cases. Brazil has over 3.4 million cases and more than 1.1 lakh deaths. Argentina is reimposing restrictions after coronavirus infections surpassed 3 lakh with 6,000 deaths. Colombia has resumed domestic flights amid easing coronavirus restrictions. Safety measures, including temperature checks, spraying bags with disinfectants, and social distancing, remain in place. However, international flights remain suspended until August 31st. Chile also eased lockdown restrictions amid a new drop in new COVID-19 cases. With temperature checks and social distancing, shopping malls and other offices reopened for business. Britain is ramping up mass testing to curb the spread of COVID-19. It has reported over 1,000 daily cases since last week. Germany reported a new daily spike of over 1,700 coronavirus cases on Thursday. France and Spain both had over 3,700 new coronavirus infections. Japan reported 1,085 new cases and 16 deaths on the day. New Zealand registered 5 new COVID-19 infections in the past 24 hours. It now has over 1,600 cases with 22 deaths. Health Minister Chris Hipkins has urged residents not to become complacent due to the smaller case numbers. South Korea had 288 new cases on Thursday. The latest outbreak is linked to churches in Seoul and surrounding areas. In response to this, in-person church meetings have been banned, while high-risk locations including nightclubs, karaoke bars, buffets and cyber cafes have been closed. Meanwhile, Australia's coronavirus curve continued to trend downwards, reporting 240 new cases and 13 deaths on Thursday.
On to the other top story that we are tracking this evening. India and China on Thursday had the 18th meeting of the Working Mechanism on Border Issues between the two countries. Both sides agreed that peace and tranquility at the border is essential for good relations. The meeting took place today via video conferencing. External Affairs Ministry spokesperson Anurag Srivastav said that the two sides will continue to work towards complete disengagement of troops along the line of actual control in the western sector.
They reaffirmed that in accordance with the agreements reached between the two foreign ministers and the two special representatives, the two sides will continue to sincerely work towards complete disengagement of the troops along the LAC in the western sector. In this context, they agreed to resolve the outstanding issues in an expeditious manner and in accordance with existing agreements and protocols.
And India and Bangladesh will explore new areas of cooperation in advanced technology, artificial intelligence, ecology and vaccines. This was one of the outcomes of Foreign Secretary Harshvardhan Shringla's two-day visit to Bangladesh. Shringla had called on Bangladesh Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina in Dhaka on Monday. Conveying warm greetings from Prime Minister Narendra Modi, the Foreign Secretary briefed Hasina on India's ongoing efforts in the wake of COVID-19. He also assured that Bangladesh will be a priority country for distribution of any Indian vaccine. 3 vaccines are being developed in India by the Oxford Serum Institute, Bharat Biotech ICMR vaccine and Zydus Cadila. Bangladesh has asked India to hold COVID-19 vaccine trial in the country, to which the Indian side responded positively. One of the other outcomes of Shringla's visit to Bangladesh was the two nations having decided to form a high-level committee to continuously monitor mechanism for ongoing projects. Several of these projects, including the Rampal Maitri Power Plant, India-Bangladesh Friendship Pipeline and rail links between Akhora Agartala and Chilahati Habdibari and Khulna Mongla rail line are expected to get completed next year. The issue of safe repatriation of internally displaced persons from the Rakhine state also came up for discussion.
Another significant area of discussion was India's development assistance in Bangladesh, as also the projects in the area of connectivity and power. Several of these projects, including the Rampal Maitri Power Plant, the India-Bangladesh Friendship Pipeline, and rail links between Akhora Agartala and Chilahati Haldibari, as well as Khulna Mongla, are expected to be completed next year. It was proposed that the next meeting of the Joint Consultative Commission at the level of foreign ministers should be convened shortly to review the entire gamut of bilateral relationship, including these projects.
News from Uttar Pradesh. The 3-day monsoon session of the UP Legislative Assembly began on Thursday under strict COVID-19 protocols.
The assembly session will have only 2 working days since the duration of the session has been curtailed because of the pandemic. On the opening day on Thursday, the assembly was adjourned after obituary references. 2 ministers, Chetan Chauhan and Kamal Rani Varun, died this month due to the novel coronavirus. The supplementary budget and the bills will be tabled in the assembly on Friday. After the Saturday-Sunday recess, the House will assemble on August 24th, presumably the last day when it will approve the supplementary budget and the bills. Special sitting arrangements have been made in the House for the session. Besides the main pavilion, the visitors and press galleries are also being used by members to maintain social distancing during the proceedings of the Assembly. All MLCs and MLAs and staff on duty have been subjected to COVID-19 tests. Assembly Speaker Hriday Narayan Dikshit had said earlier that nobody would be allowed to enter the House without a mandatory COVID-19 test.
Moving on in the bulletin, the Supreme Court has given a lawyer activist Prashant Bhushan 2 to 3 days to reconsider his statement in his contempt case.
Prashant Bhushan was held guilty of contempt for his tweets on Chief Justice of India S.A. Bobde and the Supreme Court. At the hearing on Thursday, Bhushan told the top court that he was pained at being grossly misunderstood and that he considered his tweets an attempt to discharge his highest duty. The bench, headed by Justice Arun Mishra, said, "There is no person on earth who cannot commit a mistake, but the person concerned must have a sense of remorse." The judge further noted that freedom of speech is not absolute for anyone. Bhushan's request to defer the hearing on his sentencing for contempt was rejected by the Supreme Court. His request that another bench hear arguments on sentencing was also rejected. However, the court assured that no punishment will be acted upon until a decision on the review.
The Department of Space organized a webinar on unlocking India's potential in the space sector on Thursday. Chairman K. Shivan said that ISRO is not being privatized. He also said that the government's decision to ban the import of communication satellites has offered a huge opportunity for private players. Speaking at the webinar, ISRO Chairman K. Shivan said, "Space reforms were not aimed at privatizing ISRO." He added that the space agency will look at research and development, capacity building, while facilitating participation of the private sector.
Again, I am repeating, it is not the privatization of ISRO. In fact, the whole mechanism, the whole aim of the system is enabling the private people to carry out the space activity which otherwise being done by ISRO. It is not privatization of ISRO. And in fact, that the activities of ISRO are going to increase with the time, and ISRO will be able to better utilize its resources in taking up the developmental as well as capacity building activities of the government of India rather than the routine production activities.
The ISRO chairman called the ban on import of communication satellites a huge opportunity for private players. Representing the industry at the webinar, Anand Mahindra, chairman of the Mahindra Group, said the public-private partnership model is the way to go while unlocking potential in the space sector.
Think of creating structures and systems that have never existed before. Think differently about achieving the goal, whether you're a public or a private player. Think of what support you might require from the law, from financial institutions, from regulators, from academia to make these structures work. Think of what incentives and rights need to be given and how they are to be protected. And let's make it part of our work to think about how to produce the next generation of problem solvers like Narasimha. Let's think beyond existing paradigms, and I think the answers will emerge.
Dr. R. Uma Maheshwaran, Scientific Secretary at ISRO, said the Space Activities Bill has been submitted to the Prime Minister's office and the Cabinet will take a decision on it after interministerial consultations. Eminent personalities from industry and academia attended the webinar. This is Aruna Thakur's report for Rajya Sabha TV. At least 27% students do not have access to smartphones or laptops to attend online classes. A survey by the National Council for Education Research and Training has found.
In the survey, NCERT found that about 20 to 30% of stakeholders, including students and teachers, shared that they had a difficult experience teaching and learning during the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. It also showed that mobile phones are the primary means through which students are accessing online classes. NCERT noted that more than 1 in every 3 students find online classes difficult or burdensome, with most students facing problems in understanding mathematical concepts. It said 28% students and parents believe intermittent shortage or lack of electricity is one of the major concerns hindering teaching learning. The survey also found that around 17% of students identified languages as being a difficult subject to learn through the online medium. The report also pointed out that most states are planning to create a system to ensure that textbooks are delivered to students so that their learning is not obstructed. NCERT suggested that states undertake a school-wise and student-wise survey to map the digital devices' accessibility for each child. The survey was conducted with over 34,000 participants from Kendriya Vidyalayas, Navodaya Vidyalayas and CBSE schools to understand the effectiveness of online learning measures. On Wednesday, Union Education Minister Ramesh Pokhriyal Nishank virtually released the Learning Enhancement Guidelines for students. The Ministry of Education has formulated the guidelines based on the NCERT survey findings. The minister talked about the pandemic and how education is being digitally provided to students.
And now the weather update. And rains continued to lash Delhi NCR on Thursday, triggering long traffic jams, uprooting trees, causing damage to property and inundating several areas. The flooding was particularly severe in Gurugram, where roads and parks were submerged completely.
The Delhi Traffic Police manually cleared traffic on the Narela Bhavana Road, Raja Garden Flyover, Kasturba Underpass, Jhandewala Mandir, Azadpur Vegetable Market, Jahangirpuri, Madanpur Khadar, among other places, as incessant rainfall battered the national capital region, submerging roads, underpasses and parks in waist-deep water and bringing traffic on key stretches to a virtual halt. The rainfall also crippled electricity supply in many areas. The Meteorological Department said moderate rains will continue till Friday morning. Another spell of moderate rain will begin from August 25th. With major rivers in Uttar Pradesh flowing above the danger mark, 777 villages in 16 districts of the state have been hit by floods. Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath has directed the district magistrates concerned to keep a vigil on river embankments. Parts of central and east India are also likely to receive heavy rainfall over the next 5 days. Heavy rainfall is also expected over West Madhya Pradesh on August 21st and 22nd, East Rajasthan on August 22nd, and Gujarat on August 22nd and 23rd.
Leaders cutting across party lines remembered Rajiv Gandhi on his 76th birth anniversary on Thursday. Prime Minister Narendra Modi paid tributes to the former Prime Minister who was assassinated by the LTTE during an election campaign in 1991. Paying homage, Vice President M. Venkaiah Naidu said Rajiv Gandhi's contribution to the IT sector will always be remembered. Congress leader Rahul Gandhi visited Rajiv Gandhi's memorial Veer Bhumi. He described his father as a compassionate and loving human being and a man with tremendous vision far ahead of his times. He said he was incredibly lucky and proud to have had him as father. Party leaders and Indian Youth Congress activists also paid respects. The birth anniversary of Rajiv Gandhi on 20th of August is observed as Sadbhavna Divas. And with that, we wrap up this edition of News Tonight. Take care of yourselves and your families. Bye for now. Good night.